Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Megan Fox, and welcome to the live stream. Today, we are talking about St. Louis County Court corruption. And while I go and share this link and make sure everybody knows that we are live streaming, I'm going to play for you just a minute or so of KMOV's coverage of this issue. And they spoke to a few mothers. Today is the Fathers Tell All, and the fathers are going to be here today, the fathers of St. Louis County who have been embroiled in the nightmare that is St. Louis County court corruption. But for right now, while I go and share this, I'm going to play this video for you so you can get a couple of an idea of what's going on. Also, KMOV Channel 4 is where you can find the full broadcast. They have put it on their Facebook page. So if you would like to see the whole thing, go and do that after this broadcast. We're going to listen to a little bit of it now.
Nolan was under the impression a written test did not reveal anything extraordinary, but you ended up getting diagnosed with a personality disorder.
Multiple personality disorders,
including major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, borderline, and narcissistic.
It was purely subjective. It was given by Dr. Reed. He said that there was no way that those tests could have possibly been right, and made reference that I had cheated on the tests.
I was completely naive.
Avita Tolu says she can relate. During her child custody battle, she was also ordered to see Dr. Reed and was referred by Elaine Pudlowski, an attorney acting as the guardian ad litem, which is hired to look out for the best interest of the kids. Like Nolan, Tolu received a diagnosis that shocked her.
I was diagnosed as a sociopath. I was diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder.
Did he explain to you how he arrived at that decision?
No, he did not. Because we called him for a deposition, and at deposition he could only tell that that was his subjective opinion.
Had you ever been diagnosed with any of these things before in your life?
I've never even heard of some of them. No.
Both women say the court-ordered therapy was not only emotionally stressful, but financially. According to court filings, Tolu and her ex were billed $30,000 by Reed, another $5,000 to depose him, and nearly $3,000 just to obtain a copy of her file. Nolan claims she spent $35,000 with Reed, another $50,000 hiring experts to challenge him, and then another pile of money trying to question Reed.
In the deposition the morning of, he sent me an invoice for the deposition for just under $17,000.
Are people surprised by the cost?
I hope so, because it's pretty outrageous.
Tim Roldan represents Avita Tolu. He's filed a lawsuit against Dr. Reed, Elaine Pudlowski, and another therapist named Jennifer Van Leuven, who is hired to work with Tolu's children.
So we've alleged in general, as a layperson's term, we would just say malpractice, okay? Each one of them in different areas.
According to the law.
Okay, we're going to stop that there and bring on to the program Michael Volpe. He's the investigative journalist in Chicago who is working with me on uncovering this story. Mike, thanks for being here today with me. I appreciate your time as always. This one could be a long one. We have people calling me, like sending me emails this morning. Hey, I want to be a part of this. So we could be here for a while.
Very good. And yeah, mostly women have been featured, and I'm not sure why that isn't necessarily. Doesn't necessarily mean that more women are victimized in St. Louis County. And so let's see what happens when we bring a few men on.
That's right. And joining us also today is Kenneth Rosa from the Fathers' Rights Movement. Kenneth, we're going to stick you up on the screen here. You know, Kenneth, it's interesting. I'm glad that you're here. And we found you when you started covering this story after we broke it, that you have a similar situation with the same players. Elaine Pudlowski was your guardian ad litem in your case. Is that correct? Can you hear me, Kenneth?
I don't think he can hear you.
Oh, he can't hear me yet. Okay, that's okay. We'll bring him back on when he fixes his microphone. No problem. So right now at the top of the program, I am bringing in Mark. Mark is a father who has decided to step forward and talk to us about his situation. Mark, thanks for being here. And I would just like to ask you, first of all, what led you to contact me?
Well, this has been a circumstance in St. Louis County for a number of years. I sent you a copy of a letter that I wrote to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch about the same issue that almost 6 years ago on Father's Day, and the guardian ad litem situation, the number of pseudo professionals that get involved in this process, and just the fact that the circumstance is without any accountability of any way. There's no folks that are in the galleries. So in essence, you have a cabal of folks who are working together on a number of cases that essentially grab your financial record. The first document that you ever give in a divorce proceeding is your financial record, so that they have a general idea of how much they can get paid. And so after literally millions of dollars in expert fees and legal fees, that it leaves parents completely broke. A system that's essentially intended to take care of children, put children in a terrible financial circumstance. So 6 years ago, I recommended that the guardian ad litem, the laws of guardian ad litem be changed so that they not be attorneys, that they be non-attorney guardians who take care of the interest of children, and should guardians continue to be attorneys, that there be a maximum charge of $300 per client, or a family cap of $650. In that way, it would give motivation for folks to settle cases, as opposed to cause all kinds of disagreements between parties that parties will never be able to settle themselves. So this has been something that's been going on in St. Louis County for years and years and years, and I'm really grateful to you, Megan and Michael, for shedding light on this really dark part of jurisprudence in Missouri.
And who is your guardian ad litem, Mark?
Three. The first was Bob Hamilton, who was generally a decent fellow. At the very least, he met my children. And so, and he was really more interested in getting things settled. And I would have to say that Bob was a pretty good man. After you start running out of resources, then you get the crazy ones that come out of the closet. So Sarah Pleben was the second, and she was a real piece of work. And then the last one was Jeff Medler, and neither Sarah Pleben nor Jeff Medler spent more than, I would say, 10 minutes with their clients.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can you, like in bullet points, like 3 or 4 of the most egregious things you can think that Pleben did besides not meeting your clients?
Pleben, all right. We had settled on joint custody, and then my ex-wife had another spurious charge, and I was running out of resources. I was running out of money after the first divorce probably cost the family altogether in excess of $1 million in legal fees. I was running out of resources, and my ex-wife had a spurious charge that I had assaulted my child at Disneyland of all places. So, like, who would hurt their child at the happiest place on earth? Anyhow, I was having a therapy session, which was one of these kind of required suggested therapy sessions. And son of a gun, didn't Sarah even come uninvited to a therapy session where I was to decide on kind of how to move forward with my case? So, I mean, since when does an attorney who's involved in the case come to your a personal therapy session? She also required us to have a psychological evaluation for our family. The total number of hours with Gerald Kreisman was probably an hour and 15 minutes with me, another hour and 15 minutes with my ex-wife, and then an hour and a half perhaps with my child. So total maybe 4.5 hours. He charged $10,000, and after about 8 weeks, the judge said in open court that the 6 pages that he wrote was completely useless. And so again, there's just like Kreisman was supposed to be the expert. $10,000 later, the judge said, none of this helps. This is something that's completely useless.
But there was no money back guarantee for that 10 grand though, right?
No, of course not. Of course not. And in fact, just last week, I appeared before Judge Zellweger because they're still trying to get retrieve fees. They wanted to charge me with contempt for fees that were unpaid.
That's interesting. So the notorious Judge Nicole Zellweger on audio recording telling a girl that it doesn't really matter if your father molested you, if you're telling me this, I'm going to force you to live with him anyway. But you were in front of her in the last week.
Well, I've not met her. I think something that you've reported on was that loads of these things get settled before you ever see a judge. I've never met the Honorable Judge Zellweger. I've not met her. But I think if like when things get back to normal, just sit in the lobby of family court on the 4th floor, and you'll see atrocities between attorneys and their own clients where they threaten you to make like life-changing decisions because this is how the judge is going to rule before anybody hears any facts one way or the other. And so I think that's part of when things are done in the dark without light and without juries, then people sadly get into a pattern that frankly there's no accountability anywhere. And so I'm grateful that you are starting to have accountability. In terms of the second GAL, his charges were in excess of $20,000. Again,
who is that? Who
that was Jeff Medler.
Medler. Mm-hmm.
And you don't get an itemized list of what the charges are. The judges approve the charges, and you never know what you get for your $20,000. But Medler found a court appointed psychologist to evaluate me, and so I went to therapy as I was requested, and I got the evaluation as I was required. And Judge Beach decided that he didn't want to listen to his own court-appointed psychologist. The psychologist said that I was among the best fathers he had ever met, and the judge said I don't believe him. So again, I don't know how to.
This is different than the other. This is a second court-appointed psychologist, therapist type that the judge decided was totally useless in your case. I'm following you correctly?
This was a second. Yes, this was the second judge.
Did you get the money back guarantee on this guy, or did you have to keep paying the? You didn't get the money back for him, did you?
You know what? Nobody gets money back for anything around here, Mr. Volpe. But again, this was a requirement of the judge. I did what was required of me. And he said in his ruling, I mean, this is public record. In his ruling, he said that he didn't believe his own court-appointed expert.
That's Judge Beach.
Yeah, just let's talk about Judge Beach for a second here. I have reported on Judge Beach. I have several people who have told me Judge Beach has done them wrong, and I have found a court order from Nicole Zellweger ordering a litigant in her court to use Judge Beach's mediation services at $1,200 down and $450 an hour. Now, Judge Beach used to be on the 21st Circuit Court, and now he does mediation for jams. And what a cushy job that is. You get your pals on the court to now order litigants to pay you $450 an hour for mediation when they could go and pay somebody else $250 an hour or even less. But that's not allowed. Nicole Zellweger orders people in her court to use Judge Beach. And if you don't do it, she rules against you like she did to Angie Freener.
Right. And I should mention that jams comes up in other areas of the country. I've done in Dakota County. There's a judge named Kathleen Guerin, who's a retired judge who still does cases in Dakota while she does jams. And I believe she gets her pension. Isn't that a nice deal for Judge Guerin?
That's a good setup.
Yeah, it is a
nice
good
work
setup.
if you can get it. So,
All right, so let's
Mark,
get back to your case. Go.
let's is there what else would you like to tell people here about what happened to you in St. Louis? How did your case end up? Do you have a relationship with your children? How did that work out?
Well, Judge Beach ruled in 2016 that I was to have supervised visits with my children. Again, that's another issue because in St. Louis County, there really are not a lot of folks who will do supervision, and so in essence, you get an hour with your kid with somebody kind of in between you.
But wait a minute, hold on. Supervised visits, why? You were told by 2 therapists you're a good father, no problems, no credible allegations of abuse, no police reports, no hotline calls.
No, there were hotline calls, but none of them proved credible.
But by the mother, correct?
Yes.
But they weren't hotline calls by therapists or teachers or any of that.
Well, again, the therapist occasionally, when the mother talks to the therapist is required to make a call. But none of the calls were ever found credible.
Even though the therapist he appointed said you were among the best fathers the therapist has ever witnessed, you were given supervised visits in an hour a week?
Well, it's usually as much as you can afford.
Oh yeah, but you gotta pay to see your kids.
How much did you have to pay the supervisor?
Well, if you could find one, the difficulty was finding one because it's kind of an inglorious job. And then when the supervisors testified in my case as well, and they testified in my behalf, but again, they get cross-examined and people give them a hard time. One of the supervisors they really tried to smear. So like nobody really wants to do this.
So basically, if I understand you correctly, anyone who testified on your behalf was smeared, and that's the way they justify giving you supervised visits an hour a week or maybe a little bit more?
Well, you know what? And interestingly, the judge mentioned my article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch to my own attorney. So it seems to me that he didn't like my opinion, and I understand that I probably should not have expressed an opinion about guardian ad litem because it tested the cabal. But again, the truth is for a system that is intended to protect children, it seems to me that you would want to have families together and working in that direction. My sense is that the system as it is not trying to keep families together, and so I'm grateful that you're shedding light on this because it really needs some disinfectant of light.
Because broken families going through the system are a big payday for a lot of different people.
Well, and the sad circumstance is that people get paid for conflict, that the meter starts ticking when there's more conflict. And, people are really not at their best. They're angry and hurt and disappointed. And when you need a calming effect, you don't get a calming effect. You get folks who in their interest is to continue the conflict. And that's how the billing takes place. So I'm glad that it's finally coming to light, and I hope that you continue. Just sit in the hallways when COVID is over. Sit in the hallways, and you'll see things that you can imagine that you've ever seen before.
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you speaking out, and thank you so much for telling your story.
Well, listen, and to the fathers out there, I understand that there are people that are far better than I that get drained and give up, but your children need you, and don't give up.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to bring Kenneth Rosa to the live stream now. He is with the Fathers' Rights Movement. He's fixed his microphone problem. Kenneth, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here. Can you hear me?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. Listen, could you in the next 5 minutes, we've got another dad coming on here at about 11:30. Could you in the next 5 minutes give us a rundown on how my reporting and what Michael's been reporting, how that affected you, and what was going through your head when you read the reports about St. Louis family court corruption.
Well, the main mob boss, if you will, or the head henchman, Elaine Pudlowski. All of these names start running together because they've all been doing this for decades and years together. But Elaine Pudlowski was my GAL, and so when I start reading the investigative report that you and Michael are doing, it seems that she sides against mothers most of the time. For whatever reason, I was the unlucky father, and I think that has to do with who my ex-wife's attorneys were. But yeah, so when I started reading you guys' reports and all these investigations, and then that video was leaked and all of these things, it starts to make sense how a father that has never been accused of any type of child abuse, neglect, or anything else, doesn't have a felony, doesn't have any misdemeanors. Last time I had a speak, it was 2017, how a father like that can go into a family court and never meet their judge in more than 10 hearings, less than 20, but I think it was somewhere around 17, 19, something like that. But Elaine decided that I was going to be lucky enough to have 36 hours every other weekend with my two children, unsupervised. So if I am truly dangerous, who puts children with a dangerous person 72 hours a month? But yeah, so it started making sense, and then you start seeing all of these names and these court players, and they're doing this to everybody.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting is I was really shocked when I saw your Facebook page, and you have a very big following, Kenneth. You have 700,000 followers on Facebook to the Father's Rights Movement. Did you found this movement? Did you do this yourself after Elaine did this to you?
I am not. So the founder, his name is Tom. We have a board of directors. We are a 501c3. We have the largest crisis hotline for fathers and mothers. I mean, we don't discriminate. We're just the Father's Rights Movement. We're really about children having equal access to both parents after a separation or divorce. You don't divorce your kids when you get divorced. So
Right.
we have the largest crisis hotline in the United States for the shared parenting community. And so that was founded, I believe, around 2012, something like that. Once you come out of these things and you think there's something wrong with you because you're basically relegated to a visitor, and you have all these court actors telling you that you're the worst kind of child abusing garbage on the planet. And so I reached out to the Father's Rights Movement. So I built a relationship with those people. I travel all over the United States doing equal share parenting legislation. And so it's kind of grown into that. And from that, I became the media personality face for the Father's Rights Movement in the last year. And that's taken off and introduced me to people like you. And so out of the 700,000 people that we have following us, they all have the same story. The GAL took a bunch of money. They appointed a bunch of court actors that all got a bunch of money, and they're all working and colluding against them to keep fathers. And now it's mothers. So historically, fathers made the most money. If you're going to target a demographic of people and you have a 50-50 shot, grab the dads. So moms are now being targeted as well. So now it's come to the light that it's really not about discrimination against fathers or mothers. It's really about the fact that these courts are making billions of dollars off of child support, which is a federal incentive program. And so that doesn't include the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that people are paying in attorney fees, GAL fees, court appointed counselor fees. They just keep racking up. So it's a very adversarial and archaic system. For instance, in Missouri, I believe the last time our family community laws were updated, or shared parenting, however you want to go about it, were updated, was in the 70s. So we're literally still giving custody to parents based on some 1970s laws.
Yeah, and Kenneth, can you also tell the audience what you're doing in the legislature with your bills that are being talked about right now? There's a couple of bills, right? One is the 50-50 parenting, and then I believe that.
Can I jump in after him on 50-50?
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
So there's tons of great organizations out there. There's a national NPO, National Parents Organization. There's Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. You know, they have full-time lobbyists here in the state of Missouri. I happen to be great friends with all of those people. I know all the guys over at NPO, the Fathers' Rights Movement. And so these legislative bills that we've introduced, or AFESP or NPO had one passed a couple of years ago in Kentucky. And you know, these bills aren't perfect when they get introduced and they get amendments added on, but you know, then we'll come back and we'll fix something a year or two later. So the point is that Kentucky is stating that their litigation has went down since they introduced the equal shared parenting. And so therefore the argument when you go to these legislative hearings and debates and to try and get these laws passed is, number one, you're going to take judicial discretion away from a judge. And number two, it's that you're to ramp up litigation. But that's not the case. You know, they always say follow the science. The science states that the litigation will go down. And as far as taking judicial discretion away from judges, the Fathers' Rights Movement, since you guys have pretty much highlighted all of this corruption, we've just started posting all of these stories. They just had a family court judge in Michigan arrested for child pornography. So this is a guy that is sitting on a bench, taking people's children away from them, and has been arrested by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the local authorities for having child pornography on his that's how he got caught, was he was sending the pornographic images from his government computer. These are the type of people that we're supposed to believe are gods and should have no.
And the worst part of that story. The worst part of that story is he's got 2 kids he's adopted with his partner, and they haven't taken those kids away from him yet. And I can't believe, and this is what I'm finding in St. Louis. It's okay to molest your own kids. Just don't molest somebody else's. If you molest somebody else's, then you're going to jail. But if you molest your own kids, there isn't anybody in the world that'll do anything about it in St. Louis.
Not only.
Yeah, I don't know who you would go to. As we all know, if you have a complaint of your GAL or somebody doing something that's unethical, illegal, or illogical, the person that's responsible for that oversight was on the call video with those people. You know, so she's sitting there listening to them talk about how they're going to go around the courts and do all this corrupt stuff, and she's the one that's supposed to keep all of these people honest and ethical and doing the right thing. But that's definitely not the case when she's sitting there colluding and plotting with those people on how they're going to keep this show going.
Mm-hmm. Michael, you wanted to say something about 50-50 parenting.
It's I don't want to get too deep into the debate, but it's total garbage. They do it in Australia. 75% of cases where abuse is alleged, they still force 50-50. I don't want to get into a deep debate because we can. By the way, National Parents Organization, they hate me, love David Rucky. They've stuck a gun to his kid's head. Go look it up. They're huge fans of David Rucky. But this is a father's rights bill because once you get to half, they get rid of child support. And because about 80% of the custody arrangements, the father has the lesser custody, they have to pay child support. It's all actually a scam. Some of the fathers will admit it to you. They don't want to pay their child support. That's why they love 50-50. There's no evidence that 50-50 jammed down your throat is better than the system we have.
Well, I guess that the problem is we have such a disaster in family court. Okay, it's such a web that I don't think anybody knows what the answer is. I really don't. I mean, does anybody know how to fix this problem? They don't.
I give my solution every time. You take it completely out of the court's hands. You write it into law that the judge shall not make any custody decisions. That you split up the assets and the parents figure out who gets custody when. And you get rid of CPS, get rid of all the federal funds, and you turn it into a very libertarian system where the parents have to make all the decisions.
Well, I would prefer parents make decisions.
It's not force 50-50, where you think, and by the way, this is what most of these players in St. Louis. I just broke a story. The girl is accusing the dad of molesting her. And I got two professionals, Ann Duncan Hively and Molly Murphy, saying our goal is to get 50-50.
Yeah, right.
Podlowski and all of these people, because if you have 50-50 with an abusive person, that's never going to work out. They never have to leave.
Yeah, Kenneth, I know you have. Kenneth, I know that you have an answer to this as well, because the goal with the 50-50 legislation is not to put kids in the hands of abusers. That's not the goal. The goal is so. What do you do, Kenneth? What do you do when there's an abusive parent?
Okay, so I would challenge Michael that we could sit down and have a debate on that any day of the month. So if you're married and you have 100% access to your children the day before you get divorced, you should have half of the time with them. There's 126 peer-reviewed studies out there that state that children that do not have equal access to their father are the ones that shoot up all of our schools. The children that do have access to the other parent, the ones that become aggressive. And that 80% of our prison population in the United States is full of children that come from fatherless homes. The government has stomped the father out in the last 40 years because it is a money-making system. But we can go on to that in a different show, different debate. So the 50-50 rebuttable presumptions. We can
definitely do that. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
The 50-50 rebuttable presumption bills are based on the fact that, one, sometimes two parents don't get along. We get it. So that's why they call them a rebuttable presumption. If you case that you take custody out of, and you know that instead of the system saying moms file for divorce 81% of the time, moms get custody 83% of the time. That is the United States government's own statistics. That is a hugely lopsided and discriminatory system. 83% is not even close to fair. Dads have to split 17% with foster care, DFS, other grandparents, siblings, whoever. There's actually a classification for others in there that dads have to split their 7% with. So, like I said, if you're going to target a 50-50 demographic, you're going to target the demographic who has generally made more money historically up until women started getting into the CEOs and those type of positions. So the rebuttable presumptions or 50-50 bills are just that. You can go in and have clear and convincing, not allegations, clear and convincing. So to Michael's story, where you have counselors and DFS and substantiated allegations of abuse, whether it be against mom or dad, then a judge may look at that. But what we're trying to do is if you take the attorneys out of the deal, so when you walk in and like Mark was just saying, your last guest, he said that at the beginning they were very amicable, and then the attorneys got involved and it became a UFC cage fight. That's because you go in, the attorney is telling you, oh, well, let's get some allegations of abuse going here, because if you don't, he's going to say the same about you, and then you're going to lose custody. And so what does that trigger? As soon as she goes down for the parte, it triggers Elaine Podlowski. Now she's mandated by the state to become a GAL on this case because now there are allegations of abuse. And what does that trigger? She gets to appoint her own psychologists, her own counselors. If she doesn't like you, she will shop one around until she gets the answer that she wants. If they don't like the way you're doing, as your last guest Mark just said, they'll smear the people that are saying, no, that's a good dad, he should be involved in his kids' lives, until they can stomp the guy out to where he only gets 1 hour a week. So if you have, let's say 50% of the cases that could be solved amicably, but you get these attorneys in there and they get all ramped up, and they work with Elaine Podlowski every day, so they're trying to get her too, and that's why they're saying go down and allege some abuse. That's the stuff we're trying to get out of the way. Then a judge, not Judge Beach, or the one that's always in the news because she's having inappropriate relations with the prosecutor, but that
would be Aaron Burleson.
Aaron Burleson. So these judges, we need ethical judges, not ones that are sending pornography from their government workstation to people, but these judges that's the kind of discretion they're supposed to have, so that they have time to hear these cases in what's true allegations, what's clear and convincing evidence, because no one would advocate for a child to be with an abuser, whether it's a mom or by the way, so clear, Mr. Volpe, the mother, by the FBI statistics, you're more likely to be abused by your mother and her boyfriend than you are your father. Now, would that statistic even out 50-50? I'm not saying that moms or dad should be either way. It should be even. Equality is equality. But the reason why that statistic is so high is because 83% of the time moms get custody, which elevates to
you know what? Moms may get custody 83% of the time, but when it's contested, dad gets custody 70% of the time. And in Australia, when they allege abuse, they still 75% of the time say shared custody. Such a garbage bill. But we wanted to talk about other fathers.
Yes. Okay. So
both sides. You only quote the statistic you like. When it's contested, though, the father gets it overwhelmingly, like David Rucky, like every abusive father that I know.
Okay, I promise. Listen, I promise that I'll host a debate between the two of you at a different time about this topic, because I think people do want to hear about it, and it is a very contested thing, and I think some good could come out of it. So we'll do that. But right now, I'm going to add to this stream Steve. Steve has come to the program. He has step forward. And I know this is very difficult for you, Steve. Many of the fathers I spoke to were very scared to speak out about this, and, because of the retaliation concerns. So I just wanted to say thank you for speaking out, Steve. And also, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to contact me and what prompted that? And then you can tell us a little bit about your story. Can you hear me, Steve? It looks like your microphone is working. Steve. All right. Well, I'm going to leave him up there until he gets back, because I'm sure he's there. He just texted me, so I'm sure he's there. But yeah, for sure, you guys, we will do a debate, because I do think it's an important topic, and I think it's so complicated that it's really difficult to navigate in a couple of minutes. It really is. Why don't you tell me?
I could literally fix family court in one question. One question.
Go ahead. What is it?
It's not a sex thing. It's not a discriminatory thing. Here's how you fix family court in one question. If mom or dad were to be deceased the day after the divorce, would the other parent have full custody? Now, all of the heck that I've been through with Elaine Pudlowski and the St. Louis family courts, if mom, in the last 5 years, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars taking mom back to court since the divorce to see my children. It's been over 2 years since I've seen them. If mom were to be deceased, not that I would wish that upon my children's mother, but if she were to become deceased, there is no reason that I wouldn't be able to go pick up both of my kids from where they're staying and come bring them to my house. Why? Because I don't have any DFS retainers. I don't have any warrants. I don't have any people that would have an interest to be in there. So therefore, since I would have 50-50 custody or full-time parental rights, if mom was to become deceased, I should have been an equal parent and had 50-50 time instead of 36 hours every other weekend, which is what I still have. And the kids are now timing out of the system.
Right. Kids say they feel like they got no home in Australia. It's funny. It's like, you have a test case in a country and you're all ignoring that they want to change 50-50 because it's such a disaster there. What? Because Australia is completely different from us? You guys can argue it till you're blue in the face, but they tried it in a country and they want to change it because it's such a disaster.
Well, what's the disaster? What's the disaster in
kids? You're force feeding it on them. That's number one, on kids. So they feel like they have no home. Number two, when abuse is alleged, 75% of the time they still force the 50-50. Why? Because it's dogma, just like every other dogma in the courts.
I do think that there's a problem there.
The tyranny of a random number. And most of the fatherless homes you're talking about are fathers who decided to leave the home, not one kept away from their kids. So the studies you're quoting aren't exactly the same, but it's dogma. That's all it is, 50-50. It's dogma. But because people think equal, it must make sense. No, it's just dogma. everybody's situation is different, and you want everyone to have the same.
All right, Steve is back. Let's try and get Steve back on. Steve, can you hear me? Can we hear you now? Darn, we're having some. It's not telling me that he has audio problems, so I don't know why his microphone.
Let's see if he's got it on mute. Maybe he's muting.
Are you muted? Go into your settings, check your microphone in your settings on your computer, and try it again. Yeah, that's unfortunate because Steve has a really good story. And
summarize it.
There is another case study. There is another case study in a different country besides Australia, and I understand the statistics you're citing. Like you said, when Megan brings us both back for this debate, we'll have those debates. But there is another country that they have a test study in, and the qualifications to even get into family court, Sweden, and you have to have certain parameters to even litigate a divorce or certain type of things, and their system is way down. Like they only have like 3% of their cases even make it into a family court.
Right. I think that's in almost every country, but Australia's not a test case. They have 50-50 presumed custody, and they want to change it because it's such a disaster. And this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so dishonest the way you guys bring things up, because you ignore what's happening in Australia as if it's like such a huge difference. If it's so great, why does the country that has it want to change it? Why are there MPs all over the place, members of parliament, putting up bills to get rid of it? If it's such a great thing, how come when it's tried in Australia, the kids say we have no home? And 75% of the time when you allege abuse, you think they're all making it up? No, because it's dogma. Because the judge says 50-50 is best, so I don't care if you're being molested. 50-50 is still best. And that's what will happen. That's what will happen.
Like I said, there's other things that play. There's other things that play into that. There's one of the leading researchers in the world that happens to be in Australia. So we will definitely have that debate at some time. I don't know if you got Steve back or not.
Steve, can you try your microphone again? All right, I'm just gonna have him call in, and so we'll deal with that. Steve, go ahead and give me a call. And I'll send you my number over email, and that way you can just call me in and I'll put you on the phone, on the microphone. Okay. All right. So I'll give you a quick rundown of Steve's story. He's going to talk about Sarah Pleben, and he paid Sarah Pleben $60,000.
Wait. That's impossible because Sarah said there was no money.
I know she did. She did. She said, where's all this money? I have a bone to pick with Elaine, because if she's running a Ponzi scheme, I'm not seeing any of it. But if we have one person here, one father who paid her $60,000. And in fact, I think this is the case where she made sure her bill came out to the exact amount that he made on a sale of the family home. So he likes to joke with people that, he got, his wife got the kids and the gal got the house.
Right.
It's just a terrible thing. And he'll be calling me in just a minute or two here. But yeah, I'm looking over his case right now. $60,000 to this woman. I want to know, what do these guardians ad litem do that is worth $60,000? Is there something they do here that? Oh, here he comes. Here he is. Okay, Steve, welcome to the program. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's much better. Okay, so why don't you give us a little bit of a background on how did you come in contact with me? What made you give me a call? And, what can you tell us about your case?
Well, thank you for letting me talk and give you, I hope what I can talk about can help what you're reporting on and help other people who might be going through the same thing. As you mentioned, my case involved Sarah Pleben as the GAL. Dr. Reed was a psych evaluator in my case as well. My case was filed in 2014. I had left the marriage that I had decided was toxic and abusive. I wanted to get out, plus get my kids out as much as I could. I wanted to try to do it as amicably as possible. I didn't even want to go to court if possible, but unfortunately, for anyone who knows who's tried to escape in a relationship like that, it's very difficult to do that. So I had to file in court. To give you a little background, I am an attorney, but I don't practice family law. I practice in a completely different area, federal law, and I was very naive to how family law was practiced on a state level, and was completely shocked to find out that it was nothing like what I see practiced in the federal courts. I was heavily involved in the Bar Association. I know a lot of attorneys, so I was given an attorney to use. At that time, this was in 2014, it was a little bit different. I know today there's much more shared parenting going on, but this was in the old system. In 2014, the standard, as described to me by every attorney, was the best I could hope for as a father was what Missouri referred to as the Siegenthaler schedule. If I did everything right, I would get to see my kids every other weekend and 1 day a week. So, in order for me to, quote, win, the best I could hope for would be a 50-50 schedule, which is what we filed for in court when you file your parenting plan. My ex, of course, countered with what also was the standard play at the time, which was sole custody, supervised visitation. I would never get to see my kids except somebody else watching. This was the standard play, and again, that was what's called the Siegenthaler schedule. So I wasn't at my chances of getting a amicable resolution at that point was very slim, because when that's your starting point, 50-50 or you never get to see them again, in a bargaining kind of situation, you can see where that's going. I was advised at that point that my only way to address this was to try to get a psych evaluation, a GAL, to try to expose my ex's behavior.
And let me just pipe in here. They sold this to you as the guardian ad litem being a person who would help you.
Right, correct.
Mm-hmm. This was your own attorney who did this to you.
Right, that was the recommendation, because this was sort of a template, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was how every case was supposed to go. You file for 50-50. The other party, at that time, almost always the mother, was going to file for sole custody, and she was going to allege what a lot of people refer to as silver bullets. She's going to allege everything she can think of against you, and that's exactly what occurred.
And by the way, his attorney was Cynthia Albin, who is also guardian ad litem, who plays in this same scheme. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No problem. So I followed my attorney's advice, which, that's what you're supposed to do. That got out of control pretty quickly. So the first evaluation report came out. There was a lot of money on that already at that point. I think it started at $5,000 just to get that report done, and the GAL gets a hunk of money at the beginning just to start doing that. The first report came out, and it basically said, yep, he's a good father. The mother has some issues here. She's very controlling. It exposed some of the things I was talking about. However, Sarah Pleban apparently did not like that narrative. From my understanding, I was told right up front too that she always makes a decision very early on about who is the good parent and who is the bad parent. And apparently, for whatever reason, she decided that I was the bad parent. I didn't understand why that was at the time. So when the report came out, she did not agree with it. And after a few months, she decided to request that the court issue a new report. She didn't like the original results, so she forced the court to order a new evaluation to be done. So a second evaluation was done about 6 months later.
Can I
And that
jump
one
in?
came out
Who?
completely
Oh,
opposite.
hold on.
Suddenly,
I'm not sure if he can hear you. He probably can't hear you, Mike.
Who,
Go ahead.
who was the judge who approved that second evaluation?
Who is the judge? Who is the judge that approved the second evaluation?
it was Judge Esner. Judge Esner, of course,
Esner.
passed away
He
last
passed
fall.
away. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay,
Also,
right.
by the way, another player in his case, he actually ended up hiring Bruce Hilton at one point, who
Yeah.
became a judge, but Bruce was a
Right.
lawyer also in this. Okay, continue, Steve. Sorry.
So it became clear to at that point I had actually hired another attorney, and became very clear to us that the evaluator and the GAL were working closely together. In other words, it became very clear that there was a narrative here, there was a result they were trying to get to, and whatever the facts were, they were going to use them to support the conclusions that they had already come to. And that was that I was a horrible person. Everything that my ex-wife said about me was true. Everything that the kids and I said, and other people that were interviewed, were all aligned. The only person in the entire scenario that was telling the truth was my ex-wife. Somehow, under the theory of parental alienation, I was controlling what everybody said. I was making everybody lie, including the kids, including counselors, including doctors. Somehow I was this master puppeteer that was controlling everybody, and therefore parental alienation, I shouldn't be around the kids, and they needed to be put with their mother to prevent this from happening any further.
Right.
For that, the GAL made $60,000. Dr. Reed made about $30,000. The attorney's fees, of course, were on top of that. The grand total of the case ended up being about $300,000. It went on for about 2 years before it got to trial. There was a 7-day trial for a divorce case. I was put on the stand for 4.5 days. I was deposed multiple times, all, of course, which you can imagine the attorney's fees involved with that. In the end, the court ended up ruling that I was a fit and willing father. They were unable to substantiate all of the wild accusations that were made. So I've testified in front of Congress about my case, Missouri Congress, a few times about my case. And what I've tried to impart on them, and anyone who willing to listen, is no family, no parent should have to lose everything. That's what happened. That was I lost everything. $300,000 was everything: the house, my cars, money from my parents, everything, just to prove that I was a fit and willing parent in order to get just close to, I didn't quite get it, just to get close to 50% time for my kids to spend with me. That should have been the assumption at the beginning. But instead, I was assumed to be guilty for 2.5 years. And it cost me everything. My kids have absolutely nothing at this point. I have one that's graduated from high school. There's not a dime left for her to go to school afterwards. I don't own anything. I have to rent a car. I have to rent a place to live. I have absolutely nothing. It completely took everything away from me, and it took away endless amount of possibilities that I had planned on providing for my kids. And that's what happened in this system.
How can a system that claims it is for the children, right? This is all for the best interest of the children, bankrupt a family to the point where there's no more college fund for those children? To me, that's the biggest indicator that this system is a racket. It is an extortion racket. If there's nothing left for the children when they get done in divorce court or custody court, then they have no right and they cannot say that they have done all of this for the children. When Elaine Pudlowski is living in a $700,000 house and driving a Lexus, and James Reed is living in a $900,000 house, none of this was for the children. It was for the bank accounts of these people.
Hey, can I ask him a question?
Yeah, ask it. I'll re-ask it because he can't hear you.
Did he think his kids were sold basically by Cleveland? Does he think that she was involved in something?
Did you feel, Steve, that your children were sold by Sarah Pleban?
What I felt was that she summed up how much money was available at the very beginning and decided she could continue the litigation until that was drained. And I'll give you an example. At the beginning of the case, after she was assigned, you have to disclose all of your financial assets, both sides. And this was about 6 months into it, and it was very clear that probably the marital house was going to have to be sold. So it was sold, and rather than, of course, I had suggested to the other side that the money be split, distributed between the two parties 50-50. They wanted it all, so they didn't want to agree to that. They wanted instead to have the court put it in. Money from that house was about $60,000. Over the course of 2 years, Sarah Pleban's final bill was within just a couple $100 of the money that was initially deposited in that court registry. At every single turn in the litigation, she supported continuations that extended the trial. I told you it was a 7-day trial. She wanted it to be 9 days. She didn't think 7 days was enough. She literally asked the court if we could have more days for trial. She was looking at how much can I bill to get to that $60,000 number. I don't know how after 2.5 years you can get within a couple $100 of that number. So yeah, I do think that it was here's my maximum bill and how am I going to get there?
Right. I'm not sure if legally that gets to child trafficking, but that is as unethical as you can get. And legally, that's enough to remove her from getting any more guardian ad litem work if the court felt that's what they wanted to do. Certainly should be barred from doing it anymore. She doesn't have a legal right to be a guardian ad litem. And she essentially dragged this case on until all of the money was gone. Even though you got to the end to the same thing that you proposed right in the beginning.
This is what I keep hearing from other victims too. Right. Kenneth, did you have any questions for Steve before we let him go?
No, I thank Steve for doing this as a St. Louis County father. It's been really hard to get any of the dads to come forward for whatever reason. But thanks for doing that, Steve. And 2 points that he made. One, his own attorney instigated that. She triggered the GAL. She is the one that said that there was allegations of abuse, and so therefore the GAL had to be put in place. Who they all golf, have Christmas dinner, send each other gifts. In order for that to happen, there had to be some type of an ex parte communication in between his attorney and Sarah Pleban for those type of things to go down. And the second point I would make about Steve's story is that it doesn't matter if it's a mom or a dad who's filing for divorce or custody of a child. The first thing they ask for and that you have to provide is a list of all assets, all bank accounts, all money, the worth. Now we know where to stop, and she stopped within a couple $100 of it.
Unbelievable. Steve, thank you so much for telling your story. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we let you go?
I think I just want people to be aware that they should just try to avoid being in family court if all possible. It only takes one of the two parties to turn it into the entire circus, unfortunately. a lot of courts want to come to the assumption that if it's a high conflict case, that both parents must have a problem, and they sort of dehumanize them. I think it makes it easier for them to do what they're doing, but it only takes one. And so for the sake of the kids, just stay out of family court.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate your time and your story. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. So, Marcus, I know that you're waiting on hold here, but your devices are still not connected, it's telling me. So you're going to have to go and check your settings and make sure that your microphone's on and pop off and pop back on. See if that works. If it doesn't, just send me an email. I'll get you my phone number. You can call in just like Steve did. Right now, I'm going to bring Brad Furcho to the stream. Brad has an amazing story to tell, and I'm so glad I got in contact with Brad. He's removed from this situation now in St. Louis County Court, so he can speak freely because his children are grown and he has nothing left to lose. And also, he's the only person I've spoken to who beat these people. And the way he did it is just, it's, Brad, I'm just going to let you tell your story because give us a little background on who you are and how you found me and what happened to you in St. Louis County.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, perfect. I got my name on here, my full name, because I'm open to making it public. My situation is that I went through the family court. I actually got divorced in 1999. And at the time I was running, I was CEO of Mallinckrodt, if people know that company. It's a very large medical company in St. Louis. And so I was fairly well known in town as to who I was, but also, people knew I had some money, including the family court. The divorce was finalized. I had the typical every other weekend and Wednesday night kind of a thing. And it got to the point where my oldest son, who was about 14 at the time, it was clear that we needed to make a change. I retained Kerry Mogerman as my attorney. I actually got his name as a reference from a couple of people that he was as fair, as good, and as talented as it got, and it proved to be true. As you go through the process, of course, a lot of things happen, but because of my corporate experience, we deal a lot with doctors, and the thing I always say is, what they call the person who graduated last in his medical school class? A doctor. And the same thing applies to attorneys. The same thing applies to mechanics. It applies to everything. And so I always kind of had a not trusting attitude with virtually everybody that I worked with. And so my situation is I got extremely engaged in the process from the moment it started. So we filed for it. My son was actually living with me at the time. Kerry advised me that he's old enough, if he wants to go over there, he just needs to tell his mother and have him start living with you. I actually lived about 1.5 miles away from my ex-wife. And so, of course, she called the police, and the police said, well, where does he want to be? Is he being held against his will? And she said no. And he said, okay, well, there's nothing you can really do about it. So subsequently, my son, who was a typical 14-year-old boy, I always say was the least achieving student in the history of their high school. He was a great athlete. He ended up turning to get his act together in college, but he didn't care much about school. And every single year we'd go through this progress report card. It'd be a terrible, thing, and then he'd recover. And sure enough, the progress report card came out, and it had his typical bad performance. So they went ahead and challenged, we had a custody case going on. They challenged it in court. I was using Kerry Mulgrew, and Doug Beach at the time was a family practice attorney, and he was representing my ex-wife. So when I first met with Sarah Pleben, I could tell she just didn't care. I could tell she did not care. She didn't want to get engaged. She didn't want to ask, she didn't really have any interest in my side of the story. Then they assigned us to this nut job psychologist who it was clear there was, in my opinion, she was in cahoots with my ex-wife and the family court. And so what I did is I scheduled a meeting with Sarah Pleben. And in that meeting, I had a response to virtually everything that they were claiming. I was an unfit parent. They were over at my house just because it was a fraternity house. My son was, being mismanaged. None of this, he's a psychopath or anything like that. But virtually, I was a completely unfit parent and could not be responsible for my son. So we set up a meeting with Sarah Pleben, and I told my attorney, Carrie Mogerman, you're going to go with me, and I'm not telling Sarah Pleben. And so that's what we did. We showed up in Sarah Pleben's office, and the look on her face I'll never forget. And sat down. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to do something that you have not afforded me the opportunity of, and that's to tell you my side of the case. And we're going to go through, and I had 2 notebooks literally filled with tabs on every single thing that, fortunately in those days I had a really assistant, secretary as they call it, and she helped me pull all kinds of emails. I mean, we had so much documentation.
Sure. And
we spent 2.5 hours going through every single thing. And Carrie Mogerman was a big influence because she knew at that point in time that she was not going to get away with this crap. And I was very candid. I called her unethical. I called her corrupt. I called her somebody who didn't care about the kids. I just went right at her. Now, what ended up happening is I ended up getting custody of my oldest son. My biggest concern is they knew how much money I had. And when you leave a 7-figure job after an acquisition with a parachute and everything else, I was in a situation, unlike a lot of fathers, where people say, well, your divorce cost you a lot of money. And I say, well, it cost me a lot of money, but the people who have a real problem is the people who get divorced and they have to move. They don't have any assets left. They have to move to an apartment. I mean, they have nothing left. But I smelled this whole thing playing out with, 100,000 bills. And so what ended up happening is Sarah Pleben got me for $10,000. My attorney fees were about $50,000. We were actually settled the case on the day of the trial, which is what I told my attorney would happen. We were ready for trial. We had all the expert witnesses and everything. And so when it came clear they weren't going to try this case, as my attorney came in with the big boxes of files, the legal boxes, and Doug Beach walked in with a little manila folder under his arm with like 3 papers in it. It's always about leverage. And so I knew they were ready. They were not going to try this case and we were going to settle. I ended up not getting everything I wanted. The parenting plan was I had full custody of my oldest son. She got visitation rights like I used to have. And the beautiful thing about it, and I told Megan this, is that one of my demands at settlement is that my ex-wife had to pay 50%, had to pay Sarah Pleben's entire bill, and had to pay 50% of my attorney's bill. So I walked out of there with like a $35,000 check from her. But this is what you have to do. You have to own your case. Now, the problem right now, and as I'm feeling, kind of what's happened in the family court, it's so corrupt. When you have 39 or whatever judges recuse themselves, when you have all the guardian ad litems in cahoots with the family practice attorneys, and this is so deep and corrupt that I just don't know what can be done to fix it. I just really don't.
We're doing it right now.
We're trying to do it now, right? We're trying to fix it now. The more victims who come forward, the better. And what's interesting, Brad, something you said was about how you have to own your case. And you, because of your experience as a CEO and how much experience you had in depositions and in court cases, you had that knowledge base that most people do not have. And something you said to me when I was interviewing you on the phone really stuck with me, which was, that's not how the system should be. You shouldn't have to be a professional to get justice in this country. What do people do who don't have the kind of knowledge base that you have and the resources that you have? What do they do?
Exactly. And this is, this is the thing that, my role right now is to do whatever I can to make sure that we get these people disbarred. We get these people, the judges, and it needs to get out. We need to get financial restitution for the people who have really suffered. I don't consider myself suffered financially. I'm not here because of that. I'm here because I know how smelly it is, and I know how many people are in such horrible situations financially, but most importantly, there's kids out there that are not being protected. And the idea that you're gonna, I think I heard Michael say traffic, and it's literally true. Traffic children at the expense of getting paid exorbitant amounts of money, to me, is about as bad as it gets. So what can we do to stop these people? I'm all in.
Yeah.
A couple of the most unethical things you can think of that Lieben did in your case that you didn't mention already. Some her top 3 most unethical moves in your case.
Well, Sarah Plieben, I would say, number one, her role as a guardian ad litem, the function of a guardian ad litem, she wasn't performing that at all. So she was a fraud. Now, so the number one thing we have is you depend on somebody who's got a role that they're the quarterback or they're the coach or they're going to make decisions about what's going on. So number one, she just didn't care. Or worse, she was colluding or trying to make, I know they were.
Didn't she tell you, Brad, when you first met with her without your attorney, when you walked into that meeting, didn't she have all of your exes and information and Beach's information all over her desk? And she told you what? Tell them what she told you.
She had, all the files, it was again about this progress report card, this interim report card and all the, and she looked at me and said, well, it's pretty clear that you have you're in a bad situation here, or it's pretty clear the evidence is against you, or it's pretty, that.
And she hadn't even heard yours yet.
She hadn't even talked to me.
No.
Right.
And that day that she was supposed to talk to you, she didn't. Is that correct?
Well,
you had to go back a second time.
She didn't, because I said, it's apparent to me that you've already made up your mind. You've got all the documents laid out here of what the opposing attorneys are doing and my ex-wife is doing. You haven't heard my side. You haven't seen one document from me. You're telling me that the case is stacked up against me. So there's no reason for us to talk.
Right. Can I add?
And so that's when I said, but I am going to reschedule this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back.
Yeah.
And I came back with Terry Mulder.
The other guy said Sarah likes to pick early and picks the bad parent and the good parent.
Yeah.
Sounds like she did exactly that with you. Am I right?
Yeah. And the whole thing about it was my older son and my ex-wife, it was just an amazing category of problem. I mean, they were just, my younger son, who was 2 years younger, I didn't fight for custody for him because it was different.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up fighting for custody of my oldest son, and it wasn't about just getting custody. It was about dealing with my older son, who was in a really bad place at the time, and I'm convinced would have been in a very worse place. And I think I mentioned to Megan, maybe I didn't, but the one thing I want to let everybody know is that time is the best thing you have if you stay engaged. And when your kids are younger, you feel like they'll never understand you as a father, that they're hearing so many bad things about you as a father, that your kids are forever, you're going to lose your kids forever. But as they get older, they start really seeing things. And my oldest son, he played football at Southeast Missouri State, and his last game of the year he played, and we were in the bar, you know, the last call or whatever the heck it was at Southeast Missouri State's campus. And he came over and he put his arms around me and he says, "Dad, I just want you to know, I know what you did. I know why you did it, and I appreciate it."
Aw,
And
that's great.
now that was a situation where, you know, I got custody, but these kids remember this stuff. And the feeling that you have when you don't see your kids, stay engaged, don't give up. Keep telling them you love them. And as they get older, you're not gonna lose your relationship forever. And I know it's so frustrating when you know they're having problems and you know that you're shut out and you feel like your kids are also shut out, but stay engaged. They do have perception, they do have a memory.
Thank you so much for your story, Brad. I
question,
really
Brad,
appreciate it. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Do we have time to ask you one more question?
We sure do. We have as much time as you want.
Do you think your case would have went the way that it went if you hadn't have went to Pleben's office with your attorney? And do you think the outcome was because of the way that you were giving her so much grief that she thought you might have recorded that so something would have been usable against her?
Well, the first part of your question, there's no way the case would have gone my way if I would have gotten involved. I am 100% convinced of that. The second thing is I never thought about the recording part. But I wanted her to know that don't F-U-C-K with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And
You just said,
you just got to get to a point where you just go, okay, bring it on. And again, I had a name, people knew who I was.
And they also, though,
so I had some
knew.
kind of, fear that people would have of me. Not that I'm this, grand tycoon, but I was somebody that people knew that I had the resources and I had the
Right. But you also knew, though, going into it right from the beginning that she meant you harm. And unfortunately for a lot of the people I've spoken to, they did not catch on to that until it was too late.
You never do, because here's what happens is there's certain things that we as Americans have always trusted 100%. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was the government. We're starting to go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can we really trust the government, right? Is the FBI really, and the CIA and the NSA? Start asking questions. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we've always trusted is the court system, right? I mean, what is the one thing about the United States that's so different? Innocent until proven guilty. You have a right to representation. You have a right to a trial. You have a right to trial with your peers. The court system is one of the final bastions that separates us from Russia,
right,
China, or Venezuela. And when the court system becomes corrupt, nobody can believe that a guardian ad litem and a judge and their own attorney is not on their side. It's intuitive that it just blows people away.
Interestingly, all those rights are only in criminal trials.
Yes,
trial
that's true
jury,
too.
Yeah, not in a civil court.
But people don't think that way, and what people don't understand as well is when you file for divorce, it's a civil lawsuit against the other for property,
mm-hmm.
And then with the kids, it's the same kind of thing, and so you trust these people, and you can't believe how embedded the collusion is. And I think that's the thing that we have to get the word out to people and do something so that they're not forced into the court system.
Right. This all happened like 15, 20 years ago, you're describing events, right?
2004, yeah.
It's been going on for at least that long. And boy,
that's what freaks me out, Michael, is
right.
I start thinking about it, and it's almost like, it's now these people on steroids, right?
And it didn't
They've been
sound
getting away
like
with it for so long
They
that why
just
not?
know.
it
They
didn't-
know they're not going to get caught. They're in with the judge, the attorneys, and the guard. Who's there to fight them?
We are, but it also didn't sound like with you, that was Sarah's first rodeo. She seemed pretty expert at what she was trying to accomplish. So probably wasn't her very first case where she was trying these shenanigans. Am I right? Probably she
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
she's been doing this, but I think she's got the game down even better now. And I think the systemic corruption has spread to the entire court system now.
Well, you got lucky that your attorney, by the way, wasn't part of the cabal. Or if he was part of the cabal, he didn't want to mess with you. For whatever reason, he wanted to just do his job there and get it over with.
And this is one of the things that Kerry Mogerman, C-A-R-Y Mogerman, he's with the firm Zerman and Mogerman. He's one of the top family practice attorneys in the country. He's very well known. And I'm actually going to talk to him. I'm going to call him up. We have kept a relationship over the years, not like friends, but we go out to dinner every once in a while, and I've had it at some charity events and all. But I'm going to ask him about this. And I'm going to ask if he's willing to take cases.
Yeah, we need it. There's somebody
Of people who had a problem.
Yes.
They can trust their attorney. And I would be, and that's one of the reasons I got my name up here is, I really would like to be able to give people another run at this, but make sure if they can, they've got somebody that's really going to represent them. Kerry's now in his probably mid 60s. You know, he's not somebody who I think is worried about his career anymore, or so I just had the best experience because he was totally honest and did everything. You know, him coming to see Sarah Pleben and supporting me in that, and her being so surprised that he was there, told me that they weren't working together.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I'm always glad to hear about attorneys who do good things for people in St. Louis County because there have been so few. And another one seems to be Patricia Susi, who was our last guest. That was his Steve's final attorney, and she also was the attorney on another case, on a mom's case, and she worked very hard on her behalf against this system. And it's very difficult for attorneys who are not involved in the club, who are not in the social club. It's very difficult for them to navigate in this system. And I always put out a call for these attorneys who are sick of this to come forward, to come help us, be a whistleblower, be an advocate for these parents, because they desperately need this. They desperately need good legal help and lawyers who will actually fight for them and not be engaged in ex parte communications with the guardian and with the judge and not be plotting behind their back and doing all these pre-trial conferences where the parents aren't even allowed to see what's going on. That's not okay. It needs to stop.
And by the way, my judge was Victoria McKee. And I had a good experience with her. I didn't feel, so I don't know if her name's come up.
Her name has not come up but
I think she was pretty good. You know, she didn't do anything that I thought was not her just doing her job.
Yeah, her name hasn't come up yet, except for in your case. And so that's good to hear too, because I'm certain there are judges there who are not involved in this. And it would be very nice, again, for those judges to come forward as well, because I'm sure they witness this kind of thing on a regular basis. Brad, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you want people to know before we let you go?
No, all the thing I want to say is whatever I can do to help.
Wonderful.
I appreciate what you guys are doing, and this is so important that we have people like you that are taking this on and willing to take your professional time and your passion into something that can help so many people. Because it is really, without you, you know, I tried to contact the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I called a bunch of people. Nobody will even talk to you. You know. There's no way to even get this.
They got fine reporters like Joel Courier over there.
Tony Messenger.
So, it's yeah. No, I'm joking. Yeah, Joel Courier wrote a hatchet job on the Freiner case. Yeah, look, it's this is one of the problems. Local media generally doesn't like to cover this stuff, and
Well,
I
they
think
don't want to. This is their club. They don't want to get blackmailed out. They want to have access to stories, and they care about the people.
It's much greater chance you're going to get sued if you do it right, which most of them will never admit it, but that's one of the main reasons why they stay away from these stories. It's actually still not really a good chance because the chances of being sued are actually small. So I've done a lot of stories. I've only been sued twice. So, but the chances of being sued on a story like this is significantly higher. That's one of the reasons why they don't take it on. But you're right. These are all powerful people, especially out to the judges. They're part of the crew, basically, and they don't want to take it on.
Thanks so much for being here, Brad. We're gonna say goodbye, and I hope you stick around for the rest of the stream, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
you.
All right, now I'm going to be calling our next guest because his microphone is not working. So I'm going to call Marcus. And I don't know, Michael, I haven't seen your guests pop in here yet. If you want to send them an email to see if they're on their way in. Does one of you also have me on? I can hear myself back in your speakers. Can you use headphones by any chance? I'm hearing myself back in the stream.
I can't because I don't have headphones at work.
Gotcha. Hello, Marcus?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Marcus, you're on the air. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate that you want to tell your story. Have you been listening to the live stream today?
Well, I caught the last 40 minutes or so. I wasn't paying attention that the original call was set up in Eastern time, so.
Oh, I'm sorry
I was a
about
little
that. Yeah, the time zone thing is a little difficult when I'm working in a central time zone, but I'm in the Eastern time zone, and I think everybody gets confused. Can you just tell me a little bit about what made you contact me and a little bit about your story and the players we've been talking about today?
So what made me contact you was, I follow some of the father's rights pages on Facebook and Kenneth, and I've visited some of the things that he and Mark put together in St. Louis. So from a very long 4-hour distance, I follow it as closely as I can. And I have been seeing these articles circulate, and I really hadn't stopped and read any of them. But I guess it was last Sunday night, part 8, I believe it was, popped up. And for some reason, I just stopped and read it. It piqued my interest that night, and I was reading it, and I was kind of just speed reading it because none of the names at the time were significant to me. And I got about halfway through it, and I saw the name Hilton, and that's where I paused. So then I went back to the beginning of the article, and actually read it. And the article itself was just, absolutely horrible. But when I got to Bruce, that's where I became interested because it sounded like he was the judge that was caught up in this cabal of, just a cesspool is what it looked like to me. Well, Bruce wasn't my judge, but Bruce was the opposing attorney for my case. And this case was back in 2015. So I think he was appointed judge just a little bit, or maybe he ran, I can't remember, but it was a year or two after my case. But he was the opposing attorney against me. So that's what then I emailed you saying, hey, Bruce wasn't my judge, but he was my attorney. And oddly enough, as I told you, I know for a fact my attorney sat me down in the hall at St. Charles. My case was in St. Charles County. Mm-hmm. It wasn't in St. Louis County, but the courtrooms, there's a large aisle in front of the courtrooms, and we were sitting out there, and he looked me in the eye, and he told me, he said, and of course my judge was Aaron Burleson. He told me, he said, they want
her with the mom. So you might as well agree to something. And I'm obviously fast forwarding a lot of information, but at that time, I had not had custody of my daughter for 7 years. I had been through this system. At that time, Erin was my 4th judge. I had raised my daughter. She was 7. I had her since she was 15 months. And they're telling me she's going to be with the daughter, with the mom. And I told my attorney then, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't accept that. I will go to trial. I may lose, and subsequently I did. But I had too much invested, and I don't even mean monetarily. I had too much emotion. I had too many tears. I had just too much invested to just throw my hands up at that particular moment and say, you know what, you're right. I can't take any more steps. I'm done. So naturally, we did go to trial, and then I lost everything. I didn't lose some. I lost everything. And so it was just odd that, Bruce is caught up in a scheme right now where he's, manipulating, I guess, parents and directing the flow of information. And it kind of sounded similar, because I know for a fact I was told your daughter is going to her mom. And I just ever since I read that, I thought, man, I wonder what he, because Erin was new. Apparently Bruce was a high profile attorney. I wonder what was said in the judge's chamber that I was never privy to, because it just causes pause.
Tell me, Marcus, who was your guardian ad litem?
Oh man, I had 2. So I had Andy Coor the first time. And man, he was something else. He was he just come across very sleazy. Andy did. I didn't. There was nothing about him I trusted. There was nothing about him that was comforting. And as I told you the other day, the stepdad of my daughter is in a custody battle with his wife. Well, she and I had become friends, and we would triangulate information to try to get a good idea of what each side was working on. And, she had told me, Andy knows them. Like, Andy knows them intimately. Andy had a relationship with the stepdad's cousin. And so, excuse me, on the day of trial, I had driven 4 hours for trial. I was finally able to get Andy recused because Erin told him I had to go as far as to prove the name of the woman he had a relationship with. But once I was able to do that, Erin told Andy, if you don't recuse yourself, he will appeal and he will win. So Andy recused himself at that point, and then I was appointed Nevada
Smith.
Yes, Nevada Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And Nevada, if you've ever met him, he's a little squirmy guy, and he was condescending if you've ever talked to him. And honestly, I did not expect he to go against me. I really didn't. I go to church and work. I'm not a bad guy, so I never in my wildest imagination expected him to come up with the recommendation that he did. He did his job. He came to my house. He did the house check at my house. We actually, as I told you, I know the superintendent at the school. We took him on a tour through the school, and he actually brought his mom, if I'm not mistaken. And he told me that he brought her for a first impression. He actually shook my hand when he left. I'm from a rural area, a very small town. And at the gas station, I was giving him directions on how to get out, and he shook my hand and he told me, he said, man, you have nothing to worry about. Well, I agreed with him. I knew where I had been in terms of, custody for so long. I knew what I had done, which was nothing. I never in my wildest imagination expected such a change in opinion or such a change in direction.
So how did it turn bad for you? What happened when it started going south?
Well, it went south the minute, I stepped in the courtroom, as I was telling you the other day. So Bruce, he started off and he interrogated me like a normal opposing attorney would, and then my attorney would do his rebuttal or whatever. And then the first time they skipped Aaron and they just went to Nevada, and then Nevada, like I was telling you, Nevada was questioning me about an IEP that honestly, I think I was 33 when I went through trial at that time. Until that day, I had never even heard of an IEP. I didn't know what it was. So he was asking me about something that I had never even heard of.
And that's an IEP is a special
right,
exceptions at school, learning disabilities.
Right,
Did
it was learning disability.
Did your child ever have a diagnosed learning disability?
No, matter of fact, I had her report card with me at court because I knew that her mom had always made these claims, and she was a straight A student then, and she's a straight A student now. I just got her report card from Troy the other day, and straight A's. She was talking when she was 2. There's never, ever been any remote possibility of her. And I don't say this, bragging or anything. She's just a smart kid. I mean, she's blessed.
But they made an allegation. They made an allegation that she had a learning disability, and you weren't providing her an IEP. So this is how this started for you.
Right.
Okay.
That was the implication. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened? What happened then?
Well, that was the first round of questioning, and then, like I told you the other day, the second round, Aaron jumped in, and I actually had interaction with her,
and
just like she was an opposing attorney.
Judge Burleson. She started interrogating you as if she were one of the attorneys.
Oh, she hammered me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not kidding. I think I was on the stand 4 hours the first day. And I was probably on it 2 the second day, 2 or 3. It was they beat me. I was a punching bag.
What kinds of things did she say to you? She was an
opposing attorney. Yeah.
What kind of things did she say to you, the judge?
Oh, super important things. Like I explained to you the other day, the questions I stood there and answered was why I didn't believe in Santa Claus, why I didn't believe in the Easter Bunny, why my 2-year-old didn't have her ears pierced. I don't think I told you that one.
No, I didn't.
But those were the meat and potatoes of the opposition to me raising my child.
How do you even respond to a judge who asks you why you don't believe in Santa Claus?
It's impossible, to be honest with you. I mean, like I was telling you, I looked at Bruce and I'm like, I'm a grown man speaking to a grown man about whether or not Santa Claus is real. And like I told you, what they tried to do was they tried to say, so here was the spin that they put on it. So Jackie, who was the mom, I don't know if I'm supposed to say her mom, the mother painted this huge picture of this picturesque, child and mom in this relationship of the fantasy of Santa Claus. And then they tried to say that I was like this guy dragging a huge sledgehammer around, just destroying all of this.
You're the Grinch.
All of it. Right.
You're the Grinch.
Except,
we get
except that didn't happen. I never intruded upon that relationship. And like I was telling you the other day, no lie, it was like the mom spoke words, and as they fell, they took form. And by the time they landed, everybody said, "Yep, that's it right there." And all I was standing there doing, first off, was saying, this is unbelievable. Like these are the allegations you have against me, for one. This is unbelievable. And for number 2, I mean, I could refute them, right, until I was blue in the face, but it was falling on deaf ears.
So the bottom line, one of the commenters wants to know the bottom line concern for the child in the case. It was the a lack of an IEP for a child who doesn't have a disability. And also the fact that her father didn't believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. But let me ask you something, Marcus. Did you ever tell your child there was no Santa Claus or Easter Bunny?
No. As a matter of fact, I did not. Oddly enough, the way she found out was so just to catch everybody up to speed, I'm going to predate just a little bit. I won custody. My first judge was Matthew Thornhill. he awarded me custody. Not only he awarded a joint legal and physical, but I had, as we spoke the other day, I had 8 days, and her mom had 6 days straight. Due to the time, the difference in location. So I had 51%, and I had final say in our papers. Our papers specifically said, if the two parties do not agree, father's word goes, and that goes back to all the help the mom had put me through, just getting to the point where I could see my daughter. So then Aaron comes in and takes everything away, and I did some quick numbers before I got on here. I lost 60% of my time. So I lost 60% of the time I had established by fighting. And then the child support difference, because her mom actually paid me child support, the difference was my increase was 413%. So, and at the time, her mom only made $11,000 less than myself. So there's no way that a $413 increase even makes sense. So there's that. The way the child found out about Santa Claus is we were coming home, and it was around that time of year, and she was asking me about it. And I told her, I said, "Hon, you're going to just talk to your mom about that. That's between you two. Don't get me in the middle of it." And I had stopped at my brother's house because my brother lives in between us. And so she went back to her mom's around 7. So I can't remember, she was probably 9-ish at this time, 9 or 10. So she was well able to work a phone. And I come outside. I had gone run in to see my brother, and I come outside, and she was sitting there crying. And I looked down at my phone, and she had Googled.
She used Google. She used Google to find out. Well, she was 9, so
she had Googled if Santa was real, and so that's how she
All right,
found
so
out.
tell me, Marcus, what was you went from having all this custody all the time with her. She went to school in with you in your house, and then was spending about the same amount of time with her mother, though. And what did they switch your custody agreement to?
So during the school year, so from August to May, I get 1 3-day weekend a month. So I get Labor Day in October or September, and October I get, I think it's Columbus Day. And in November, her mom actually gives me all of Thanksgiving because the grandmother passed away on Thanksgiving, and the mom did not feel like doing Thanksgiving one year, so she just let me have it, and I think she's just afraid to take it back at this point.
What about summertime?
Just 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
So you went, there's just no reason for doing any of this to you. There's just no allegation of abuse. No, nothing.
No, Aaron said I was a good dad, actually.
So even Judge Burleson admits that you were a decent father, but you were taken, your 50-50 was taken away. See, this is the kind of thing that absolutely drives me absolutely up a wall. There's no reason to do this to any parent, mother or father, if there isn't a serious allegation, a serious concern of abuse. Didn't you also have to see her supervised visits for a while too?
Yeah. In the very beginning, I would have to go to her house. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget it, nor will my mom. One of the visits. So just to give that story a little context, or the whole thing. So when I was setting up because I in the very beginning, her mom would not let me see her at all. So I knew then I was going to have to go to court.
This is when she was a baby. Yeah.
Right. This is as an infant. So I began, as a male, and let's be real, males are terrified of the system strictly because of the history. But as a male, I knew there were certain things I could do. Okay, I can voluntarily put her on my insurance because I know I'm going to be asked to do that. And I actually voluntarily pay child support pre even Thornhill. I paid $200 a month to her mom on my own volition because I knew that it would be expected of me. So I just got, the cart in front of the horse, or the horse in front of the cart, and got that out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But once they gave me the temporary custody, at that time I actually worked nights, And so don't forget, I'm 4 hours south of her mom. I would work till 12:30 was the end of my shift. Her mom was able to pick the time. They gave me one Saturday. I would be able to go up there on Saturday morning. Except her mom picked the time and knew that I worked nights, so she made it at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I would work till 12:30. I would go home. I would go to sleep. I would wake up at 5, and I would start the journey to. At that time, she lived in Willow Spring. She would go back and forth between her mom and her dad lived in Lake St. Louis. One particular trip to her dad, under this supervised visit, my mom went with me every trip. Just for one, it was her granddaughter that, she couldn't see either. For two, I always wanted a record of what had transpired while I was there. But I'll never forget, on the trip, my mom had picked up an outfit. And when we got there, the mother had asked me to bring the Social Security card for the child. For some reason, I think I had it because I was putting her on my insurance. And I didn't bring it. And it was the simple reason, and it sounds really crazy, but unless you've not had your child, you need tangible things that are your child's. And that was the only tangible thing I had. And I wasn't just giving it up. It was a Social Security card. It was dumb. But if you've been in my shoes, you understand what I'm saying. And when I didn't bring that card, man, her mom flipped out, kicked us out of the house, and I'll never forget. She grabbed that outfit that my mom had brought, and she handed it back to her and said, "Take this back. I don't want it." And it just killed my mom, But yeah, my first visitations were supervised. I've never once had any, anything, any allegation, I'm not a bad guy. But my visitations were supervised, and then I still had to go up there, but I was able to get them moved to the townhouse or whatever the community center thing for the condominium that they stayed in.
Michael or Kenneth, do either of you have any questions for Marcus? Marcus, I'm not sure if you can hear them. If you have a headphone, you can listen to the live stream on. That would help. Otherwise, I'll just repeat the questions to you.
I can't hear anything.
Okay,
right now.
I'll make sure I repeat it to you. Either one of you have anything for him?
So,
wait, Mike,
just to get this straight,
you're muted.
Marcus gets a 51% custody ruling. Conflict mom or high conflict mom comes in, wants to change that for the reason of getting more child support. And Judge Burleson, they always tell you that the best interest of the child is to create the least amount of chaos, which if the child lives with dad most of the time anyway, they take the child from him, give it to mom, and he gets knocked down to supervised visits with a child that he had 51% of the time over some child support orders. So this is a perfect case of...
He got his supervised, it was unsupervised after, and this is the second time he's gone through custody. So on the second time, the first time is when they did those supervised visits to him. The second time, he just gets his basically, he gets his time knocked down to just weekends, and only 3-day weekends, not even regular 2-day weekends, only the 3-day ones. It's insane.
Right. Okay.
It's
so to that point, that means I don't have a consistent school year schedule, because there may be 6 weeks in between 3-day weekends.
Right. So, it's an incredible amount of time they took away from him for no reason whatsoever. Mike, if you've got a question for him, just unmute your microphone. I muted it because of the background noise.
Okay, no, I have no question.
Okay. All right. He's got no questions. All right, Marcus, thank you so much for taking part in this. I really appreciate it. We're going to be moving on to our next guest. Is there anything you want that you want people to know before we say goodbye?
Man, no. I pray. Honestly, that's, because the system is vicious.
Yeah.
I pounded my son's head, don't have premarital sex, and pray, because it will eat you alive. Both emotionally and monetarily.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And
absolutely,
I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, Mike, if you want to tell your next guest to go ahead and give me a call, we'll put him on because we still have more to go here. And you have any thoughts on this, Kenneth, that you want to share about what we've heard so far?
So our first run through in 2015 for Missouri legislation on a 50-50 rebuttal presumption, we obviously did not get that. A lot of people have the misconception that Missouri is a 50-50 state. It is supposed to be presumably that. And what we did get was a little law slid in that's called Senate Bill 1550, which is a facts, findings, and conclusions that took place or became law in 2016. And what that does is the judge, so it's an accountability factor. The Judge Burleson, after 2016, has to put in writing why she came to that decision, why she made those conclusions and facts. So that way, fathers or mothers like Marcus or parents can have a way to actually have something to take to an appellate court now, because before that, it was just whatever the judge said is what it was, and there wasn't any way to appeal it. So that was one little step we got through that was an accountability factor. They need cameras in these courtrooms.
Yes, I want judges to wear body cams. I want body cams on all judges. And I think that we should be live streaming on YouTube all the time. And I don't see any reason why family courts should be closed. I really don't, especially to the press. We have never identified a child. You know, we have our own rules of decorum in the media and what we do. And we would never violate the privacy of a child. That's something that it's just outrageous to even suggest by a court to suggest that the press would do something like that, I think is outrageous. We exist to make sure that they are doing their job properly. And there's no reason to keep us outside of the courtroom. Absolutely none. And yet they do it on this bogus privacy of the child BS. Go ahead, Mike.
Also, there's very limited times when you need that. They can just gag those specific times. What they're doing is they're gagging entire cases, and they're gagging people all the time. One of the first stories that broke about this, I can't remember the judge's name, but she's out of Connecticut. She had her divorce sealed. So she was doing divorces, but you had no idea what was happening in her divorce. How does that work? So, and they're taking what should be used in a very, very limited case, and they're using it anytime they're getting scrutiny, but they always hide behind privacy. And there's very, very limited times when you need it. Like if you're talking about child sex, something like that, something that needs to stay out. But a divorce is a court case. It's completely ridiculous to claim that all of these things should be private. If you want it private, don't get divorced. You're going into court. It has a court file. It has a judge. It's in a courtroom. How is that private? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making this determination that's bogus. Yeah, we're going to keep the privacy, but we're also going to have a court case and a judge. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I've got on the phone now another victim of, I believe, St. Louis County. This is Stan. Stan, welcome to the program. Mike, I'm just going to mute you for a minute here. Have you been listening to the live stream? Have you heard the other stories?
Unfortunately, I have not.
Okay, that's okay. I want to just, I want to know, you can tell us a little background about how did you come to contact us, and you know, a little bit about your background and how you got caught up in this system.
My way of getting in touch with you or Michael Volpe was a friend on Facebook posted the story of a guardian ad litem that was chosen by for our case. My case, I have a daughter with my ex, and she's 14 now. We had a case go through a modification for child support through the state. The state turned around and changed the health insurance that mom was court ordered to pay. And then it went from a modification for support, and the state came back in 2017 of December that I cover health insurance, and the support went up from $395 to $537. So I went ahead and filed a judicial review. So from there on, it got caught up in the system, meaning I filed a judicial review, went to court, they moved it to the family court, and it was a motion to modify. I went to a juvenile mediation. You mediate before you litigate, and I was fine with that. Very involved in everything my daughter does from day one, school, you name it. And from there on, so activities, and it was just a matter of this whole modification came from mom arguing and lying to the state. When you do a modification and you have a hearing, what happens is I turn in my overnight visitation, what I'm court ordered to have. Mom turned in and lowballed and told the state that it was only 70 overnights and I don't fulfill my visitation. So this is where the problem lies. Elaine Podlowski was added to the case in December of 2018. Mind you, the case started at December 2017. So
why was she
we
added
went to we went to the mediator at and my case is in St. Louis City Courts, Division 22, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a judge. Burke was her name, and then along the way, you just couldn't make any of this stuff up. It was just a matter of let's play kick the can, meaning we'd have a court date. This was pre-COVID as well, so we had a court date set up. The attorneys, the guardian ad litem, the judge, everybody would show up at court and nothing would be done. So I had calendars, I had documentation. We were on Talking Parents app, you name it. If the guardian ad litem would allow mom to, we'd set up a modification, mediation, mom wouldn't show up. So I would, it came down to mom got rid of her attorney and she was pro se. So she also had worked for the St. Louis City Police Department as well. So there was a bunch of issues ongoing, having just being bullied or powered, and Elaine's opinion.
Can you tell me when Elaine was appointed to the case, was there a reason why? Was there an allegation of abuse, or was this recommended to you?
That's exactly right. There was no abuse at all. I had an attorney that was referred to me, and her name is so it all began with, we're going to have a guardian ad litem, and my attorney, Beth Lewandowski, said, well, let's let the other, Gonza was the other attorney, let's let them pick the guardian. Oh, great. They picked Elaine. That's who we want on this case. She's for the fathers, is what she said. I said, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, well, that's great for me as a father. And we went on from there, and it was the whole kick the can. 1 minute my attorney would be great, Beth, and then she'd never answer emails. Same thing with Elaine. And it was just a matter of, here we go. It's just never anything. So she came by and seen my daughter once. And then after that, I ended up paying my first attorney off, got a second attorney. And since then, Elaine just never would do anything. So I went to Kids in the Middle.
Who was your second attorney?
Stephen Mandelman.
Okay. And when you said Elaine saw your daughter once, I hear this a lot, that the guardians don't see the children.
Correct. It is. So what we were ordered to do is go to Kids in the Middle. So I would fulfill my time, and I would take my daughter on my visitation. Mom didn't even sign up, didn't go. But I was the only father in the Kids in the Middle. And I thought at first, well, I've been through this years ago with my older children. And I went in with an open mind on Hanley, and all these moms had so many more problems than I did, but everybody had the same common denominator, that the guardian ad litems, even if there's abuse involved, and it was like, wow, mine isn't that bad. Mine is more of it was bad, but other moms would give me advice, and that's what the whole point of Kids in the Middle was. But like I said, there was never any abuse. There was no allegations for drugs, no physical, none of that. It was more of playing the numbers of the court for overnight visitation. Mom was getting paid for support. I was ordered to pay the health insurance, and then the attorneys were all getting paid, and so was the guardian ad litem. So why change anything? They just kept on drawing it out. There would never anything. I would file a proposal, and the proposal would be ignored until the next court date. And Elaine would stand there in front of the judge, Your Honor, there is nothing I can do with these two. And I'm like, why isn't anybody seeing this? What is going on? So Burke lost her seat in the court, and thank God we had this new judge, Madeline Conley. She was voted in, and she discovered, to make a long story short, that this case did not need to go to trial. But if you could see the amount of, Mom wasn't even paying the guardian ad litem. There's just so much that she just ignored through what her job title really is, through the Supreme Court. And that's where I have the problem with Elaine, is that she wouldn't answer emails, and it was just a big delay, and COVID hit, and that's what, there's just no excuse. It's just
was kids in
frustrating.
the middle the therapy group that you were recommended to go to?
Yes.
And was that an Elaine Pudlowski choice?
I believe so, yes.
And who was the doctor that you were assigned to see there?
I couldn't tell you. She's already left that location, unfortunately, moved out of the state.
And what was your opinion of that therapy?
The therapy got off on the bad situation. I receive all my emails and I reply. Kids in the middle turn around and said, went back to the guardian saying, I'm not getting a hold of him. Nobody's setting up appointments. And I'm like, they had my email wrong. So they were sending it to a wrong email. So they finally took ownership of that, and we kicked that off, and it was like 18 visits or something, if I'm not mistaken, and then finished to where you got a certificate. And I did learn a lot through there of being able to have Mom responsible for being a part of co-parenting. So everything was ignored is the frustration in this for my daughter. Choice of school, just being involved in general, and I would provide every piece of documentation, the calendars for years, the school documents, Talking Parents app that we were court ordered to use, and none of that was even used, and we didn't even have to go to trial. It came down to we end up settling to where I did finally receive joint physical, joint legal. I was asking for a true 50-50. It was just a cash for.
Well, let's talk about that. How much money? What were the financial losses for you in this? What did you pay?
It was like $21,000
total, or that was
yes total.
Okay. How much did you pay Elaine Pudlowski?
$5,000.
And how much did you have to pay Kids in the Middle?
Nothing.
Oh, that was a court.
I was able to go through juvenile, and they found resources through the state.
Boy, Elaine did your.
Go back to that juvenile officer.
Elaine seems to have done your case on the cheap. That's not a high amount for her.
It's not, but if you really look at the documentation on what was really involved with her, it was just a matter of she'd show up at court, and I'd even talked to my attorney, and I was getting frustrated because what she does is she'll show up for court and then go run around and do her other cases, and then show back up, and then you're on the dime for that whole time she's there. And I get divide and conquer. Let's be here for this, but it just was a matter of the state messing up the modification. It was a matter of having a guardian ad litem for no reason. It's a matter of, if we're going to co-parent and we're going to be in this together, Mom didn't really have to follow the rules. She wasn't paying Elaine, and they canceled at the 11th hour. The judge has canceled. And this is an ongoing case that took over 2.5 years for an open and closed, simple case. There is no assets. There was no 401 retirement. There was no home to split. We weren't even married. This is just a matter of a modification for custody. And I understand money plays a second back seat to this whole thing. And I understand all of that, but while you're continuously paying, it becomes a situation to where they want to break you financially. I end up it was a big burden. This whole case will cause anxiety. It will cause financial burdens. You name it. It's just been really frustrating.
I'm gonna ask Michael Volpe and also Kenneth Rosa if they would have any questions for you, and you won't be able to hear them, but I'll repeat them to you. So if you could just hang on for one moment.
When he spoke to me, he said that Elaine has a lot of power, and that's what she was able to do this. Can you have him explain how he noticed how much power she had?
Sure. Okay, Stan, Mike says when you explained it to him, you said that Elaine has a lot of power, and he wants to know, can you explain how you noticed the kind of power that she has? What were some indications that Elaine Pudlowski has?
That's really easy to answer. I would be coming up with solutions and answers, and nobody would want to hear it. I would send proposals, and she would ignore it, and then show up at court and say something totally different. The judge holds them at a high standard to review and put together what she feels is best for the child. And at the end of it, she never turned in a review. We didn't even go to trial, but it was just a matter of, I'm just going to sit back, play neutral, not do anything, and then charge fees and not really do an investigation, not contact school, not come over and visit the house, my house or mom's house. And it just was a matter of the judge would just, why we would even have a status conference when all they would do is she'd fumble through her pages and act as if, okay, let me just be brought up to speed. This is this case. And she would just say something that was just irrelevant and meant nothing, to where, well, I can mediate with them. So then mom wouldn't show up to the mediation, and she would ask me, is mom usually like this? I'm like, she's not paying you. They cancel. So they would just cancel our court date and cancel things. But I was attached at the hip whenever mom would email or contact Elaine. These weren't divided bills. This was no matter who contacted her, is what I'm saying. It's as simple as that. So she just was never. So I was told Elaine Pudlowski gathers all of her information, and she makes a goal line decision at the 11th hour and tells the judge what it's going to be. And we never seen I said, then fine, then let's go to trial. And then the whole time it's like you're being told, oh, you can't go halfway up the mountain, Stan. You gotta follow through with this case, And I've let mom off the hook every single time, and paid an attorney, and then we just move on. And I've had other guardian ad litems as well.
Who else?
Molly Murphy.
Molly Murphy, we know her.
Yes, yeah, I've had her.
What was your experience? What was your what's your opinion of Molly Murphy?
She gave me huge details and gave me a detailed 2-inch booklet of everything, what your statutes are for family law, which was very helpful. Came to find out, after I was removed from the house and had an ex parte against me for no reason, my ex's family, whole background, and she also was a civil servant for the police department. It became, no matter what happened, she had Molly Murphy was my attorney, had a court order to get my belongings. I'm in construction, so all of my tools were over there. I have my initials on them. Mom didn't care, so I come to find out, she walked into that courtroom. Molly Murphy accidentally did a copy, black and white copy, on a copy machine, and she filled in some of the letters, and it came back as Emily. My ex went into court and showed the judge, and it was fraudulent. And all she did was just make sure it's legible. And the judge was mad, so I wasn't able to get any of my belongings.
Who is you had? How much did you pay Molly Murphy?
I think it was like $2,500. It was like I paid her retainer, and then turn around. I didn't end up needing her anymore because at the time, being in construction, the housing market crashed. Being in residential carpenter, it's kind of, you gotta have to provide for other things more than. I just have always backed
All right, so
off.
that's like $7,500 so far. You've paid Elaine the $5,000 and $2,500 to the next one. Did you say was there another gal appointed to this case as well?
I think another guardian. Is that what you asked? I'm
sorry, another guardian. Was there another one after Molly Murphy?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. All right, Kenneth, did you have any questions for Stan?
For clarification, I'd like to go back and what was the trigger? If there's no allegations of abuse, what was the trigger that got Molly Murphy and Elaine Pudlowski involved in the case?
Okay, good question. All right, if there were no allegations of abuse, what was the trigger that got Elaine Pudlowski and Molly Murphy appointed to your case?
Yes. It just, the way I understand, it's just an automatic thing. It's like if it's a contested case, you bring in a guardian ad litem, they sort through the crap or things that we're not seeing eye to eye on or agreeing, and they try to evaluate what's going on and what's best for the child.
So what we're finding here is high conflict. The trigger is high conflict case, and that is not legal though, because legally speaking, you're supposed to only have a guardian ad litem appointed to the kids if there's an allegation of abuse.
It was treated as a divorce, if you will. Everything had to be mirrored, and every single. I can't think of the term of whenever you ask somebody a bunch of questions, they have to mirror your answers, your questions. My first attorney dropped the ball on that and never answered those questions. So then my second attorney had to do everything that she didn't do. It was just a nightmare. It just was 2.5 to 3 years of court case that was so basic. Let's run the Form 14s. Let's just make it. We end up finishing with a 5225 is what the final result was. So a guardian ad litem was just appointed really for no reason. I mean, I feel like it was just a waste of, if she's so busy, and I hear all these other cases that are more serious with sexual abuse and drug use, and their lights are off, and you name it. I'm like hearing these things, and we don't have that. It was just a matter of mom didn't want to lose time, because that's what it came down to. And it was proven. I fulfilled my time, and it's just that Elaine just sat back and just played neutral is what happened. And it was sad to where, and what she does is she puts it in the court order that she's paid in full, and then even if you dispute something, mom doesn't show up at mediation, I do, we're still charged, but
nothing gets done.
It's just a matter of what her tasks were for the case, and that's really where the Supreme Court should look. What is she actually doing for these cases in the best interest of the child? Period. Do some homework here. Go to the school, find out what's going on instead of, I just felt like she just played right down the middle purposely and didn't want to do anything. And that's why, when was she going to let the judge know what her opinion was on this case?
How did this end up for you? How does your custody agreement and your relationship with your children?
Well, this is what happened. We started doing Zoom, and mom wasn't showing up for Zoom. The judge pretty much came down to, I asked for this case to be a retro. When you file a case, a motion to modify, it should go back to that date. The judge kindly decided that she is not a retro judge. So along the way, from her income being increased, mom's, she lost her job along the way, and then she found a new job, which was a higher paying job. So a simple Form 14. My income never changed. I get like a 2% raise, okay? So what mom's income was, so was mine. So it come down to my proposal after proposal after proposal. My attorney finally had to go line for line for line for months Do you agree to this? So then mom would come back with something outrageous. And we finally nailed it down to like 2 or 3 things, went online for a Zoom meeting, and I asked again for the retro, and she said, I'm willing to go back 6 months because of COVID. So she was able to do that. Mom immediately said, look, I'm willing to give 50-50. He can claim her on the taxes an even amount of years, the 5225, but he has to pay for her new braces. So pretty much once mom found out, there was never really it came down to, why would anybody want to change a court order other than me, because I was being denied my rights as a father? Why would anybody want to change it? Because this is a simple case, and it was just drawn out. Mom made it to where she was pro se, so she didn't, it's not 2 attorneys negotiating. It was everybody knew what was going on here, but they just kept on kicking the can and just playing along. So it was very frustrating.
Stan, thanks for your story. I sure appreciate you joining us today. And I'm sure that we will be in touch as time goes on here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Mike, do we have anybody else coming up?
I haven't been able to reach the last person, so I think that's it.
Okay.
We've listened to a lot of different stories.
Yeah, we have.
There are definitely a lot of men who are victims as well, which is often, once you open the onion, as they say, you find that it hits both sides a lot. And that's true of St. Louis. The other thing I like is Sarah Pleban seems to have an MO. We're going to learn more, I think, about her MO as well. So I think we got a lot of things accomplished.
Yeah, Kenneth, why don't you, after hearing all those stories, did you see any similarities between what happened to you with Elaine Pudlowski and what happened with these other fathers?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. That guy, that is an open and shut case. You got one simple form to do the custody case, but you have a conflict individual that doesn't want to agree to anything. And so they went back and changed things that shouldn't have been changed. The guy before that, he had the kid 51% of the time, and they took the kid from the stable home that it knew, which was with dad, and just totally convoluted and tore up its life to make sure that the high conflict individual was the one that received the major share of the custody, because that's the one that'll keep all of the high litigation going. It was the same in my case. I believe total, they asked us to pay for her attorney fees. Her attorney fees with Haas and Haas were $92,000.
You're talking about wait, Pudlowski's bill?
No, in my personal divorce case.
Your personal divorce. Okay,
my ex-wife's attorney fees were $42,000. Hers were $92,000. Mine were around $42,000. Pudlowski got $15,000. I can't remember how that was split up and what all else was in there. There was counseling. There's another set of counselors out in Eureka that she uses a lot. So, hey, once you get these, in our case, it started out amicable. I was using my ex-wife's attorney to try and be amicable to just, get the divorce done. The only thing we were talking about was parental time, who was going to get what. And for 10 months, we did 50-50. That worked well. And then she changed attorneys, went to Haas and Haas. That's when the high conflict came in. And then all of a sudden, now there was allegations of abuse. We had to have counselors for the children. And so once a set of attorneys ramped up all of that litigation and adversity, then you get Elaine Pudlowski in there and all these counselors, and then they're talking the kids into things that may or may not have happened. And if it did happen, then these guardian ad litems will shop around until they find a therapist that will agree or disagree, whatever their narrative is, to make the story fit. So now, how do we determine who really is abusing children?
Yeah, Elaine Pudlowski did that in Caroline's case, where 3 court-appointed therapists, 2 of whom she chose herself, said the father should never have unsupervised visits with the child. And Elaine just kept finding therapists until she found one who said, "Yep, unsupervised is fine." I mean, it's incredible how this is working and how this is happening to parents. And I would like to say that I got some pushback about how the stories I was covering were all women. And I hope that today, by showcasing the fathers who have been affected in St. Louis County courts and St. Charles County courts, puts that to rest. This is not an issue. It's not a gender issue. This is not about men versus women. And I'm hoping that both sides can kind of come together and realize that the government, the judiciary in St. Louis, is stepping on the rights of parents in general, and that this is a situation that needs a whole lot of oversight, and it has none, zero. Does anybody have any final thoughts on what we've heard today, or in the investigation going forward, and what the next steps are?
Right. First of all, high conflict is just a term that the court created, and it's a bogus term. But what you're seeing is the courts create conflict when none is there, or they cater to the abusive personality. And the reason they do that is that creates cases where a lot of people can make a lot of money. In Stan's case, there was no conflict. They just created it. Same thing with yours. And in other cases, they'll ignore abuse, because then that's the kind of conflict that goes on forever. The bottom line for all of them, they are making a lot of money. Elaine, Pleben, all of these people are making a ton of money doing it. So you're right, it's not a gender issue because they're just greedy. Some of them may be misogynist or misanthropist. It's possible. I think a lot more of it is they're just greedy, and whatever opportunity they see, they'll take. One of the guys talked about silver bullet technique. That's very common, primarily used against men. I did one of the first ones I did was Neil Shelton. The book I wrote, Chris Mackney, he had the silver bullet. It's almost as easy to tag, and it's primarily the man who's tagged with a false allegation of abuse. As you're now seeing, it is easy to hide real allegations of abuse, and often the same person in different cases will do both. I bet you'll find.
I know, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. I don't understand why they're doing it. Except that it's the greed. The greed is just overwhelming, I guess. But it's outrageous to see this happening, where real allegations of abuse, credible allegations of abuse, are being hidden and suppressed from the court, while false allegations of abuse are being blown up into nothing. Into taking kids away from people who should never have had them taken away in the first place. So this is a serious issue. If you're a victim, please contact any one of us on this live stream. You can contact Kenneth Rosa at the Father's Rights Movement. He has a Facebook page there that you can contact him. They have a hotline. Kenneth, what is that hotline? You want to put that out there?
Let me grab it for you. I will grab that.
Sure, you do that.
Top
and
of our page. I don't have it.
You do that. I'll give him my contact information. My contact information, if you want to send me an email, if you're a victim of the St. Louis County court system or any Missouri family court system, or anywhere in the country for that matter, because we are collecting stories from across the country as well. My email address is Megan Fox, MEGANFOX, at pm.me. So you can email me there. You can also check out the columns on pjmedia.com, which have my contact information at the bottom of them. And Michael, what's your contact where you want people to contact you?
Just my email, mvolpe998@gmail.com.
Okay. And Kenneth, go ahead and give us the hotline for your page.
So we do have Facebook page, and that is the main way to get a hold of us, is to send a message directly to that page. If you are having a crisis, as in you are having inappropriate thoughts that you should not be having, or those type of things, because you just cannot believe the insanity that is ensuing upon your life from these family courts, you can reach out to us at can't I pull this up? That's crazy.
Okay.
Looks like 907.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see it. View cover photo. There we go. 907-312-5552. And the reason why that is why it's not on the top of my memory is we're switching over to an 800 number. Like I said, we do run the largest shared parenting community crisis hotline in the world, I guess. So you don't have to be a father to reach out to us, even though our name is the Father's Rights Movement. We are about children's rights to both parents when there is fit, willing, and able parents on both sides.
Kenneth, was that last number 5522? Is that correct? 5522.
5552. 907-312-5552.
5552. Okay. I'm going to put that up on the bottom of the screen and let it go. Let it go for a little bit. I've got all of our email or contact information right there. So if you want to contact Michael, his email address is right there. My email address is also right there. And the Father's Rights Movement hotline, if you want to call, is right there. Please do contact us if you are experiencing any of the things that you heard in this broadcast today. And thanks for being with us and for hanging in there for all 2 hours. Share it with your friends. The replay will be available. And thanks a lot, Mike and Kenneth, for being with me. I appreciate it. Anybody got any last thoughts before we go? All right, good. All right, we'll see you guys later. And check out pjmedia.com. And of course, you can find Michael Volpe at the Provocateur website that he's on. And Father's Rights Movement for Kenneth Rosa. Have a great day, everybody.